up everyone, welcome back to my channel High Point, the place to have contents related to UGC NET English. So in this video we are going to learn and discuss about yet another great tragedy by William Shakespeare, King Lear. So if you have not yet followed my channel or subscribed to my channel, please subscribe it for more contents like this, and follow me in Instagram too. The ID for my Instagram is right here, so you can follow me there for more savable materials like study cards and small videos. And also I have in a daily basis I am actually sharing many things there, so you can follow me there in Instagram too. And also you can visit my website www.highpoint.in for more contents related to UGC NET in the form of audio lectures, previous question papers, and downloadable PDF materials as well. And also once you join the course, you will get weekly tests and personalized timetable to follow. So yeah, let's begin our main session of the video. So this is the introductory section for the play. So it's a tragedy by William Shakespeare, and it is based on the mythological Lear of Britain. So there is a mythological character in Britain, Lear. So it is based on that character, and first known performance was in 1606. So the first known performance of this play, King Lear, happened in the year 1606, and the play was revised after the English Restoration period as the audience disliked its dark and depressing tone. So this is a tragedy by Shakespeare, and we can see as we move on to the summary of the play, there are a lot of dark and dark scenes are there, and also depressing. Throughout the play we have a depressing tone. So as the audience not very much liked it, the play got revised after the Restoration period. Actually after the first performance itself, this play got revised several times. And however, the original version has been regarded as one of his supreme achievements. So even though many revisings or revised versions are available for William Shakespeare's tragedy King Lear, but the original version that Shakespeare himself produced has been regarded as his masterpiece or supreme achievement. The characters as well as the plot always attracted its audience as well as critics. Next, this is the character list of the play. So I have included even the minor characters. At least you have to remember the important characters to understand and to to memorize the plot of the play. So Lear, the title character, he is the protagonist or tragic hero here, and he is the king of Britain. So the story is actually happening in Britain, and another one is Earl of Gloucester. So around Earl of Gloucester, another subplot is also revolving that we will see as the story moving on, or when we discuss the summary. Earl of Kent, later disguised as Cassius. Then fool, Lear's fool. So in this play we have a fool here in the name, fool itself. So fool is Lear's fool, and he is following Lear everywhere. Then Edgar is Gloucester's firstborn son and true-born son. Then Edmund, Gloucester's illegitimate son. So please do remember these two characters, because in the subplot these two characters are important. Goneril is Lear's eldest daughter. Regan is second daughter, Lear's second daughter. Then Cordelia, Lear's youngest daughter. Then we have Duke of Albany, Goneril's husband. Duke of Cornwall, Regan's husband. Gentleman attends Cordelia. Then Oswald, Goneril's loyal steward, King of France, suitor and later husband to Cordelia. Duke of Burgundy, suitor to Cordelia. Old man, tenant of Gloucester. Curran is a courtier. So these are the actually I have not included that many minor characters, but at least you have to remember these the characters that we have in the first list. Okay, so these characters are important to know the story and understand and memorize the story. So let's begin. So we will have act wise, scene wise, a detailed summary of the play without wasting time. Let's move on. Act 1, scene 1. The play exposes with a conversation between Gloucester and Kent about Lear's decision to divide the kingdom. So we have informed as audience through the discussion, through the conversation between Gloucester and Kent, it is informed that King Lear decided to divide his kingdom among his 3 daughters. Who are they? Goneril, Regan and Cordelia. Gloucester introduces his bastard son Edmund to Kent and said that even though he was raised away from home, he is dear to him. Lear enters and announced his decision to divide his country among his 3 daughters. So that's happening in scene 1, act 1. The scheming 2 elder daughters of Lear, Goneril and Regan, responded in an overblown manner and told that they love him more than anything else. So actually Lear has not yet decided that he should give how much of power to each of his daughters. So he just asked how much they love, to what extent that each one of them love Lear. So Goneril and Regan, they are actually his 2 elder scheming daughters. So they are actually, they tell many sugar-coated words to Lear, and also in an overblown manner, they responded to Lear that they love Lear more than anything else in this world. But Cordelia, she is very simple and she is very true to true to her words, and she only tells the truth. And Cordelia, she refused to speak anything about this question because she was reluctant to answer this question even. Why? And she was pressed to talk, and she tells that, or she said that she loves her father exactly how a daughter should love her father, and her sisters won't have husbands if they love him as they have told. So this response by Cordelia actually shocked Lear because he loved Cordelia more than anyone else, and she was so dear to him, and even though her answer was so true and full of sincerity, even though Lear actually flies into rage and disowns Cordelia. So out of that anger that he had when he heard Cordelia's answer, he at that moment itself disowns Cordelia and divides his kingdom between his 2 elder daughters. So this is the exact mistake, or this is the fatal mistakes that Lear commits here. All the other things, all the tragic events befalls upon him happened due to this decision. Next, the Earl of Kent disagreed with the decision made by the king. So Earl of Kent is a good person, and he disagreed the decision made by the king out of anger, because he is angry towards Cordelia's answer, and Cordelia, he disowns her at that moment and divided the kingdom between the 2 elder scheming daughters. So that is all other persons can see their scheming nature, but Lear was so blind to that, and Earl of Kent started to or tried to advise Lear to revise and rethink about his decision, but Lear turned his anger towards Kent too and banished him from the kingdom. There were 2 suitors were also present to marry Cordelia. So it was like in that moment 2 suitors were there for Cordelia to the King of France and Duke of Burgundy, and Lear called these 2 suitors, both of them, and said that Cordelia, see, I have disowned Cordelia, and so Cordelia holds no title here. So if they wanted to marry, if either of them wanted to marry her even now, without any titles, they can marry her. And King of France was willing to marry her as she was honest honest, and she left the place without Lear's blessing. The crude elder daughters schemed together to reduce the remaining authority of their father has over the kingdom. See, they got the whole kingdom, but nothing could satisfy them. So there ends scene 1 of Act 1. Now begins Act 1, Scene 2. Edmund's soliloquy about his pangs of being a bastard. So here we can see the subplot, okay. Edmund's soliloquy about his pangs of being a bastard and his resentment about Edgar, Gloucester's legitimate son. See, Gloucester and Edgar. Edgar is Gloucester's legitimate son, lawful son, but Edmund is Gloucester's illegitimate son. So the life was not so easy for Edmund because he is a bastard son of Gloucester. Even though Gloucester now recognizes him as his own son, even then he he makes a soliloquy about his pangs of being a bastard son and his dislikeness and resentment about Edgar, Gloucester's legitimate son. Next, Edmund plots against Edgar by forging letters written by Edgar and acting like hiding them from Gloucester. So, in that soliloquy itself, it is revealed that, Edmund is actually planning against or plotting against Edgar in order to make a distance between, or in order to, in order to destroy the bond between Edgar and Gloucester, because Edmund feels that Edgar is a potential enemy to get his own titles from Gloucester. So anyway, lawfully every other title of Gloucester will naturally be carried to Edgar after Earl of Gloucester. So, it's like Edmund want all those titles and wealth by himself. So, he was again, he is planning against Edgar. So, what he does, he actually wrote a letter. Okay, Edmund writes a letter, and in that letter, he has written in a way that it is written by Edgar, and Edgar has given that letter to Edmund. He pretends like that, and when Gloucester was about to find out that he pretends like Edmund pretends like he want to hide it from Gloucester. He doesn't want to give this letter given by Edgar to him to Gloucester. Okay. So all this plot was arranged and made by Edmund. Edgar has nothing to do in this letter and all. Naturally, he demanded reading them. So Gloucester saw that he is hiding that letter that he pretends that Edgar has written to him. Naturally, Gloucester demanded Edmund to read that letter, and Gloucester ended up believing that Edgar is planning to kill Gloucester for his wealth. Edmund is actually playing a double strand here, that he is actually making Gloucester and Edgar enemy. And when he confronted Edgar, he told that his father is angry with him and he should always carry a sword for his own safety. So this is again a plan, a scheme by Edmund in order to make Gloucester even more thorough about his belief that Edgar is planning to kill Gloucester. Okay, there ends scene 2 of Act 1. Now Act 1, Scene 3. Lear is with Goneril and she complains about his knights and attendants to her steward Oswald. Goneril is the oldest daughter of Lear, and now Lear is with Goneril. So he was planning to stay with either of his daughters. Once he will stay with one daughter, after some time he will be staying with another daughter. So it goes like that. So being a king of the country, he has many attendants, more than 100 attendants, servants, knights to protect him and to do carry out his needs and all. So Goneril, when Lear was with Goneril, she was complaining about his knights and attendants to her steward Oswald, and she asked her servant to act rude to him. So in order to make Lear, in order to throw out Lear from her palace, she asked her servants to act rude and impolite to Lear. And in Act 1, Scene 4, Kent appears before Lear as a simple peasant. See, Kent was so true to Lear when he was advising Lear not to take a decision in haste. Out of anger, do not take any decision. Kent was not ready to leave Lear, so Kent appeared before Lear as a simple peasant, and they talked about honesty and accepted him into service. So Lear doesn't know that Kent is this simple peasant is Kent, but because they had a good talk, Lear accepted Kent into his service. Lear knew the indifference of Goneril's servants to him, and Oswald behaved rude to him, but Kent helped him. So it was like Lear was not dumb, and Lear's fool arrives and in a funny way cited his mistake of dividing the kingdom among the elder daughters. So even though he is called as Lear's fool, he is not a real fool or dumb person. He actually make fun, entertains the king, and also he tells some wisdom through the funny things that he says. Okay, and Goneril comes and tells Lear that she dismissed his servants and half of his knights, even if he likes it or not. Lear is shocked about her betrayal, and he went for his second daughter Regan. So after hearing this, Lear was so shocked, and he was so annoyed about her betrayal. See, he has given half of his kingdom to Goneril. So that's a huge gift. But she was not at all satisfied with it. Now she wanted to get rid of this poor old man, that is her own father. So Lear could not hold this betrayal, and he went to his second daughter Regan, and that the situation is not going to be very good there with Regan as well. So Goneril and her father Albany argues each other about her treatment of her father, and she tells that she has written to Regan not to admit his 100 knights. So now Lear only has very little amount of servants comparing to the older times, the earlier times, and he only has 100 knights. And also Goneril and her husband Albany, they engage in an argument that Albany was disappointed about her treatment to her own father, and she tells that she is such a rude person, rude to everyone. So she tells that she has written a letter, she is going to write a letter to Regan asking her not to give space to his 100 knights. You have to reduce that even if you are going to admit Lear. Next, Act 1, Scene 5. The fool foresee that Regan is going to treat him no better than Goneril. So there ends Act 1. Now Act 2, Scene 1 begins. Here we can see Gloucester's house. And his servant, Gloucester's servant, Curran, tells Edmund that Regan and Duke of Cornwall are coming there in that same night. Curran tells Edmund that Regan and Duke of Cornwall, they are coming there in that Gloucester's house, they are coming. Edmund was delighted as he plans to get Cornwall's support for his ventures. So Edmund, he wanted to have supports from these two scheming daughters of Lear, Regan and Goneril. So it will they can be very great company, because Edmund is a scheming person, Regan and Goneril, both of them are same. So they will be a good company for each other. So Edmund was delighted by hearing this news from Curran about the arrival, and he goes to Edgar's hiding place and tells him that Cornwall is angry with him for he being sided with Albany, and he didn't understand it. So actually Edmund is telling something to Gloucester, his father, and something else to Edgar in order to make them great enemies. And he goes, after hearing the arrival or the coming of Cornwall, Duke of Cornwall, he goes to Edgar. So Edgar is now hiding somewhere, and Edmund goes to that place, and he tells him that Duke of Cornwall is very angry with you. Why? Because he has known that you have sided with Albany But he has no idea, Edgar has no idea what Edmund is telling, so he didn't understand anything, and also suggested that he should leave the place as Gloucester is not happy with him. So he suggests that, you have to, since everyone is against you, it's better that you run away from this place, you leave this place. When Gloucester came, he drew his sword and pretended to fight with Edgar. So now Earl of Gloucester arrives there. So without any provocation, in order to show Gloucester that they are fighting with each other, Edmund draws his sword just to show Gloucester. Until that moment they were talking, right? So as soon as Gloucester arrives in that scene, Edmund suddenly drew his sword and pretends that he is fighting with Edgar for Gloucester, because they are having some argument there. So Gloucester also believes that since Edgar also has a sword and he also keeps a sword with him, he thinks that Edgar is about to planning the murder of Gloucester. Now by seeing Gloucester, and he was so confused, Edgar flee from there, and Edmund wounded his own hand and tells him that Edgar tried to persuade him to join him in his plan to kill his father, but he fought with him. So when Edgar left that place, Edmund made a wound in his own hand and tells Gloucester that, see, they were engaging in a fight, because when Edgar persuaded him to join him in his plan to kill his father, he was not agreeing to that, so he has to fight with him. So that was the reason that Edmund gives to Gloucester, or explanation for the situation. So Gloucester was pleased by hearing it, and he even promised to find Edgar. Okay, and Edmund trapped Regan and Cornwall in his plan too, and turned them against Edgar. So Edmund, as soon as Regan and Cornwall arrived there, he even trapped Regan and Cornwall in his plan and turned them against Edgar. And they seek advice about Cornwall's letter about Lear to Gloucester. So Act 2, Scene 1 ends there. Now Scene 2 of Act 2. A fight between Kent disguised as the peasant attacked Oswald. So Kent is there with like a peasant, ordinary peasant, along with Lear. So Kent and Oswald, they have some fight in between them, and Kent was punished by Regan for disrespecting the messenger from Goneril. However, he is the messenger of Lear. Okay, so Kent was the messenger of Lear, which was sent to Goneril to make some arrangements to receive Lear, but Oswald was the messenger from Goneril. So when they had a fight between Kent and Oswald, Regan only punishes Kent. Why? Because he disrespected the messenger from Goneril, even though Kent was the messenger from the King Lear. So that doesn't matter. Kent reads a letter from Cordelia promising to do something to make things improved. So Kent happened to read a letter from Cordelia too. So Cordelia, she is now with King of France, and she also has sent a letter to Kent, and Cordelia promised that in that letter Cordelia promised that she will try to do, or she will do something to make things improved. Act 2, Scene 3, Kent sleeps in the stocks and Edgar comes to him in the form of a poor Tom. So this was a question I have seen in several question papers, that who is disguised as poor Tom in King Lear play by Shakespeare. So it was Edgar. So in order to hide from his father and the Duke of Albany, so he thinks that everybody is against him. Kent sleeps in the stocks and Edgar comes to him in the form of poor Tom, who is a beggar. Okay. So Act 3, Scene 4, Lear comes to Gloucester and saw that Kent is in the stocks. When Lear saw Kent in the stocks, he was even disappointed and he insisted on talking with Regan. But they refused. But when they finally come, they said that as Lear is old and unreasonable, he should go back and beg Goneril's pardon. So, he was insisting on talking with Regan, and finally Regan came and she told to Lear that, Lear is so old, and being old, he is very unreasonable, and that's a one thing that she tells, right? Because if he is reasonable, if he is rational, then he won't divide his kingdom between these two scheming elder daughters. Regan was very right there, but still Lear is old and unreasonable, so he should go back to Goneril, and he should, their father should beg, and the king should beg pardon of Goneril. See the situation? And Lear asks Regan the shelter, but she refuses. And later Goneril arrives there, and both of them tell Lear that if he wants to leave either of them with either of them, then he has to give up half of his men. So this was their condition. Regan and Goneril joins there, and both of them tell Lear that if he wants to live with either of them, with Regan or with Goneril, he has to give up half of his men and attendants and servants that surrounds King Lear. So that is actually a humiliating thing for King Lear. A moment later, both the daughters refused him to give any servants, and Lear heads to outside to the storm, and they refuse to call him back. So after hearing this last thing, Lear was so angry and disappointed with his two daughters, and he now very much know that what mistake that he committed, and Lear heads out. After hearing that, Lear goes out and he heads out. Now he knows that sooner or later he is going to even though he gave up all his attendants and servants, it is not going to be good for him, because sooner or later they will treat him as a servant. So Lear heads out, and storm was there, and they refused to call him back. Okay, now act 2 ends there. Now we have act 3 scene 1. Now Kent is in search of Lear. So Lear heads out to the storm in that wilderness, and Kent doesn't know where Lear went, and so Kent, in search of Lear, finds his knight and asked him to go near France, where he will find some help for Lear's cause, and gives him his ring so that Cordelia get to know who sent him. So it's like Kent got a letter from Cordelia, where Cordelia promised him that she will do something to make things improved. So Kent was searching for Lear, and while he was searching, he finds one of Lear's knight, and he asked that knight to go to the border of France and Britain, and there you will find some help for Lear's cause, because Cordelia, his daughter, is the queen of France now. So the knight will get some help from there, and in order to make them understand who sent this knight, Kent gives his ring to that knight, and after that Kent went in search of Lear. Act 3 scene 2. Lear is wandering in the storm, so he heads towards the storm, and he was wandering in the storm and refused the request of the fool to humble him before the daughters, which he refuses. Okay, so the fool comes to Lear in that storm and said to Lear that see, you are old and you cannot wander here in the storm. This is not reasonable, so it is better that you go and humble yourself before the daughters, and you can get a shelter at least. But he refuses to do that, and Kent finds them. He persuaded and brings them to a shelter in the hovels. Act 3 scene 3. Gloucester became uncomfortable when the daughters abandoned Lear. So Gloucester saw that even though Gloucester was not trying to advise Lear when he made such a decision, but Gloucester was not a bad person at all. So Gloucester was very much uncomfortable and disturbed when his own daughters, Lear's own daughters, abandoned Lear. Then he comes to these two daughters in order to ask a permission to help Lear because they are in power. So if something goes against their wish, then that is a punishable offense. So Gloucester went and asked to go out to help Lear. But these two daughters, Goneril and Regan, they ordered him never to speak about him, or never to speak about anything related to Lear, or never to speak to him, or don't try to find him, let him be in the storm. They don't care. And Gloucester got the information that England is going to get attacked by France, not French, France. And he asked Edmund to go and distract Cornwall as he could not find that he is absent, and went out for looking Lear. So see, here he makes a mistake that Gloucester completely believes Edmund. Whatever he says, he believes. So Edmund is a trustworthy person before Gloucester. He doesn't know that Edmund is playing a double strand in order to carry out his own plans and schemes. And Gloucester asked Edmund to go and distract Cornwall and the daughters, because he wanted to go out and find King Lear, and nobody should know that he is absent from his place. But he doesn't know that as soon as he goes out, Edmund is going to betray him. So he plans to betray his father, that is expected, and immediately expecting to inherit his father's wealth as soon as his death. So for this offense made against the orders of this daughter, Edmund thought that he will his father will be dead because of this crime. So Edmund expect that he is going to inherit all his father's wealth at once as soon as after his death. Act 3, Scene 4. Lear's mental health began to decline. Okay, mental health began to decline, and they are in the shelter because of the storm. And Edgar, as a poor beggar, comes there and joins them. So Edgar, as poor Tom, disguised as a beggar, poor Tom, he also comes there and joins them. And Gloucester, in search of Lear, and convinced Lear to go with him to the castle, and Lear took the disguised Edgar with him. Okay, so Gloucester came out of the castle, and Gloucester in search of Lear, and he even convinced Lear to go with him to the castle, and Lear took the disguised, that means the poor Tom beggar, which is actually Edgar. In Act 3, Scene 5, that we already know that Edmund is going to betray Gloucester, and since Gloucester went against the orders of Cornwall and the sisters, Cornwall made Edmund the Earl of Gloucester. So who is the Earl of Gloucester now by order? It is Edmund. So Edmund went to find Gloucester. So now Edmund wants to kill Gloucester. So Edmund, because of the orders by the authority, Edmund went to find Gloucester. Now Act 3, Scene 6 begins here. Lear is insane now. Insane means he is mad and his mental health is not great. He is out of his mental order. And Gloucester brought them to a small building owned by him. And Gloucester overheard the plan to kill Lear, and asked Kent to transport him to Dover to find his allies. So this building must be near to his own castle. So Gloucester overheard the plan to kill Lear. So he wanted Kent to transport immediately Lear to Dover and find his allies, because Dover is a border place and it shares its border with France. So there is a chance that they will get an allies there. The Act 3, Scene 7. A punishment is waiting for Gloucester in his castle. So Gloucester was so unaware about the betrayal of Edmund. Goneril and Edmund went to Albany's palace to avoid the sight of punishment. So it is going to be a very horrible sight. So Goneril and Edmund, both of them went to Albany's palace to avoid the sight of punishment, and Gloucester was caught. As soon as he entered into the castle, Gloucester was caught and brought to the daughters by Oswald, and he was tortured by them and gouged out his eyes. When he was alive, his eyes were plucked out of the socket of his eyes. He was thrown to wilderness and the storm. And before carrying out this punishment, Goneril, Edmund, both of them went to Albany's palace. Now, he called out Edmund for help. So Gloucester still doesn't know that Edmund betrayed him. In order to have some help from Edmund, he calls out him, but soon he realized that Edgar was untrue to him and he was led to an old beggar. Now Act 4 Scene 1. Edgar he himself disguised as a beggar now. So Edgar saw his blinded father with that old beggar, but he didn't revealed himself as Edgar before him, but he heard Gloucester's words of regret about his treatment of Edgar. Now Act 4 Scene 2. Goneril takes more military power from her husband Albany, and now she wants to be with Edmund, and they together fight against the French army. Now Goneril wants to have Edmund. So Goneril now she is more in power than her husband, as she took more military power, and now she wants to be with Edmund, and they wanted to together fight against the French army. But Edmund he is also taking the chance, and Goneril leaves him, and Albany comes to Goneril and argues for Lear, but she insulted him. A message comes about the death of Cornwall because of the wound caused during the gouging of Gloucester's eyes. So Duke Cornwall gouged out the eyes of Gloucester as the punishment. He was the one who carried out that punishment. And a message arrives to Goneril and Albany that Duke of Cornwall is no more, because a wound was there caused during the gouging of Gloucester's eyes, because it was infected. He dies. Goneril had mixed feelings. She doesn't know what to do and how to act, because now Goneril sees that Regan has more chance to win over Edmund. Okay, since she is widowed now, she can marry Edmund easily, because Goneril already has a husband. It is not easy to get rid of a husband just like that. So Goneril had a mixed feelings. It will make Regan less powerful, but at the same time she can pursue Edmund now more freely. Goneril leaves to answer Regan's letter. So she wants to write a return letter to Regan, a reply to Regan, and Albany resolves to take revenge upon Edmund and help Gloucester, that he was the one who betrayed Gloucester. So Albany knows exactly what is happening there. So he wanted to, he is a good person, somewhat a good person. So Albany resolves to take revenge upon Edmund, because Edmund is the one culprit here who is actually making everyone's life a hell, and Edmund actually wants to help Gloucester because he is the one who betrayed Gloucester. Now begins Act 4 Scene 3. Kent in Dover gets a letter of Cordelia. So now Kent along with Lear and all, everyone went to Dover, and there he gets a letter of Cordelia, who is in charge now. And however, Lear is there in Dover now, refused to see Cordelia because he is ashamed of his act to her. So now Lear also knew that Cordelia is there, and Lear doesn't want to see Cordelia, not because he has any dislikeness towards Cordelia, but because he is ashamed of his act to her. Act 4 Scene 4. Cordelia sends a troop of army to find Lear in the cornfield, and the message of the arrival of army of Cornwall and Albany arrived to Cordelia as expected, and she prepares for the battle. So now Cordelia is there in charge of the army, and they are planning to attack, and they are planning to attack against the army of Cornwall and Albany. And Cordelia, while Lear was insane and Lear's mental health is not at all good, and Lear ran away to a cornfield. So Cordelia sent a troop of army to find Lear in that cornfield, and the message at the same time, a message of the arrival of army of Cornwall and Albany arrived to Cordelia, and they were preparing for the battle. Now Act 4 Scene 5. Regan reveals his desire to have Edmund to Oswald in a conversation. So Regan reveals, since her husband is no more, she is free to have Edmund. So she reveals her desire to have Edmund to Oswald in a conversation. She also promises him a reward to find and kill Gloucester. So Regan also promises him a reward, because Gloucester is there. If Gloucester and Edgar is there, it is always a threat to Edmund's power, so she also promises him a reward to find and kill Gloucester. Then Act 4 Scene 6 follows. Still disguised, Edgar tells Gloucester that he is leading him to a cliff, and Edgar, still disguised as a poor beggar, does not reveal anything to Gloucester. So Edgar tells Gloucester that he is now leading him to a cliff, and Gloucester wants to commit suicide because after all these horrible things that he experienced, he doesn't want to live anymore. So Gloucester wanted to commit suicide, and as he thought that he was reached the top of the cliff, he jumps but fell to ground and faints. So Edgar was not leading him to cliff. It was like Edgar only told Gloucester, blind Gloucester, that he is leading him to a cliff. So Gloucester wanted to commit a suicide from jumping from that cliff. So as soon as he was told that he reached the top of the cliff, he jumped but fell to the ground and faints. Edgar now acts as an ordinary gentleman and tells Gloucester that he fell from the cliff and it is a miracle that he still survives. Now Edgar is acting no more as a beggar. Edgar is now a gentleman, ordinary gentleman, and comes and tells to Gloucester that he actually fell from that cliff, but it is a miracle that he still survives. The mad Lear stumbles upon Edgar. So Lear, insane Lear, mad Lear, was wandering there. So he stumbles upon Edgar and Gloucester and recognized Gloucester and asked in a disconnecting manner. So even though Lear recognized Gloucester, he talked and he told everything in a disconnected manner. And Cordelia's troop of army find them, and Oswald finds Gloucester and tries to kill him, but Edgar rescues him. So what happens? Oswald was also promised a reward to find and kill Gloucester. So Oswald finds Gloucester and tried to kill him, but Edgar rescued him from Oswald. And Oswald entrusted the letter of Goneril and Regan to Edgar, who is disguised as a peasant. Okay, so Edgar is not revealed as Edgar to anyone. Edgar is acting as a peasant. So Oswald entrusted the letter of Goneril and Regan to Edgar, who is disguised as a peasant. He decided to keep the letter and reveal them to Albany when the time is right. Okay, so it was like earlier we have informed that Goneril was preparing a letter to Regan. Okay, so that letter was entrusted to the old peasant or the peasant, which was actually Edgar, and he decided to keep that letter, and when the time comes he will reveal that letter to Albany, okay, when the time is right. Now Act 4 Scene 7. Kent is with Cordelia and Lear was brought to Cordelia. He partially recognized him and said that he knows that she wants to punish and banish him like her sisters, but she forgives him. So Kent is with Cordelia now as they are going to fight against Albany and Edmund. So Lear was brought to Cordelia now, and Lear cannot fully recognize Cordelia, okay, and Lear said to Cordelia that she also wanted to banish Lear from there like her sisters, but nothing like that happens. She forgives him. Edmund is leading Cornwall's army, and battle between France and England rapidly approaches her. So what happens? Since Cornwall is not there, Duke of Cornwall is dead now, Edmund leads Cornwall's army, and the battle between France and England rapidly approaches, and there ends Act 4 of King Lear. Now we have Act 5 Scene 1. Regan expresses her desire to Edmund and asked him to be away from Goneril. So Regan is free to have Edmund now. So she expresses her desire to have Edmund as husband, and Regan asked, she is very jealous of Goneril, so Goneril asked him to be away from Goneril. Next, despite the sympathy towards Lear, Albany agreed to fight along with Edmund. So Albany recognizes Edmund as a culprit, Edmund as a betraying person, but still even though he has some sympathy towards Lear, but attack from another kingdom like France is a threat to their own authority. So once they solve this problem, Albany is going to avenge Edmund or fight against Edmund. So for that situation, in that situation, Albany agreed to fight along with Edmund, Regan and Goneril against the foreign invasion over England. So England was invaded by another foreign force from France, and Goneril and Regan jealousy spar over Edmund. So both of them want Edmund. Regan is more have chances to have Edmund. So Goneril and Regan, they were so jealous with each other, and none of them were willing to leave Edmund with another one. Okay, so Regan was not ready to leave Edmund with Goneril, or Goneril was not ready to leave Edmund with Regan at any cost. The three exit together. So Edgar was waiting for the right time to reveal this letter to Albany, right? So now Edgar comes to Albany in a disguised form and gives this letter to him, and in that letter it is revealing that Goneril has some involvement with Edmund, illegitimate involvement, extramarital involvement, and Edgar asked him to kill him. And Edgar asked him if he wins the battle, he can blow a trumpet and he will provide him with a champion. So Edgar tells Albany that if he wins the battle, after that battle, he can blow a trumpet and a champion will be provided for you to fight against Edmund. So Edmund comes and informs Albany that the battle is upon them. And Edmund talks directly to the audience alone about his promises to Goneril and Regan, and he will make the decision after the battle. So Edmund comes to Albany and tells that, see, the war is approaching, the battle is upon them. And Edmund talks directly to the audience. He is thinking over to the audience, and he talks about the promises that he made both to Goneril and Regan, and after this battle, if he survives, he will make the necessary decisions. He also said that if Albany survives, Goneril can kill him herself, and if British wins, then he will show no mercy to Cordelia and Lear. So this was his intentions. There ends scene 1 of Act 5. Act 5 scene 2 begins. Edgar fights in the side of Lear, and he comes to Gloucester that their side lost and Cordelia and Lear was captured. So this fate was against them, and Edgar sided with Lear, but he comes to Gloucester and said that they actually lost the battle. Cordelia and Lear was captured. Gloucester and Edgar goes from their shelter. So it's not safe there to stay there anymore. So Gloucester and Edgar goes from their shelter. Now move on to scene 3 of Act 5. Edmund gives the guards about treating Cordelia and Lear in custody. Edmund gives some commands about treating Cordelia and Lear in custody. Albany, Goneril and Regan come to Edgar and asked to produce Lear and Cordelia, but he lied to them and said he sent them as they can arouse sympathy among the troops. So Albany, Goneril and Regan, they come to Edmund and asked to produce the captures, the prisoners, Cordelia and Lear, but he lied to them. Edmund lied to Albany, Goneril and Regan, and lied to them and said that he sent them because these two people, Lear and Cordelia, they can arouse sympathy among the troop, because they were actually, Lear was their former king and Cordelia was a good person too. But Albany, after hearing this from Edmund, Albany accused him of acting above his rank, and Regan, who is unexpectedly fell sick, claimed Edmund as her husband. Regan, she's actually feeling sick unexpectedly all of a sudden, and she claimed that he is not less in power because Edmund is her husband going to be. So she was led to the tent of Albany, and he blew the trumpet to summon his champion against Edmund in the duel. So it's like now Albany won the battle. Now when Regan was felt sick unexpectedly, she was carried to Albany's tent. Now after that, Albany blew the trumpet as told by Edgar, and in order to summon his champion as promised by Edgar, and Edgar himself comes now as in the form of a champion, dressed as a champion. Edgar himself comes and defeated Edmund and left him alive as requested by Albany and revealed the letter to Goneril. So what happens? Edgar comes and he defeats Edmund, but he never kills him, because as requested by Albany, he left him alive and he revealed in their presence. Albany revealed the letter to Goneril, which was Goneril wrote to Regan, and Edgar revealed his identity to them and told about Gloucester. So Edgar now also revealed himself as the son of Earl of Gloucester, and he also told about Gloucester. And message comes to them that Regan was poisoned to death by Goneril, and Goneril commits suicide. So what happens? See, Regan felt unexpectedly sick because she was poisoned by her own sister Goneril, and after that, her letter to Regan was revealed to Albany, and everybody knows that Goneril poisoned Regan. Now she cannot stand, she commits suicide. And Kent enters and asks where Lear is. So Kent also comes there and asked the whereabouts of Lear and Cordelia. Albany recalls with horror that Lear and Cordelia are still imprisoned and demanded from Edmund about their whereabouts. So only Edmund knows where he has kept Lear and Cordelia as prisoners. So Albany also asks about their whereabouts to Edmund, who is still alive. And Edmund repents his crimes and determines to do good before his death, and tells the others that he had ordered that Cordelia be hanged and sends a messenger to try to intervene. And Lear enters carrying Cordelia's dead body and lamenting over it. So by the arrival of the messenger, the order was carried out already. The hanging of Cordelia, execution of Cordelia carried out already. So Lear enters there carrying Cordelia's dead body and lamenting over it. And Kent approaches, but he didn't recognize him. So Kent approaches to Lear, but Kent was not recognized by Lear. And it was informed that Edmund was also died, and Lear also died soon, looking at his daughter, dead dear daughter. So Lear also died heartbroken, looking at the dear daughter Cordelia. So that's how Lear met with his tragic end. And Albany gives Edgar and Kent their powers and titles back and invited them to rule along with him. So Albany is the only one who is in authority, lives now. So Albany gives Edgar and Kent their authority and power back, all the titles which was taken from them, gives them back, and invited them to rule along with him. And Kent, feeling himself near death, refuses, but Edgar seems to accept. So Kent is old and he also feels that his death is near, so he refuses to come along with Albany. So, but Edgar seems to accept it, and in future they will rule the kingdom together. The few remaining survivors exit sadly as a funeral march plays. So in the end of the play, we can see a funeral march. Lots of death happened. Goneril, Regan, Edmund, Lear, Cordelia, most of the main characters died. It was only Albany, Kent, and Edgar left alone. So with the few remaining survivors, a funeral march plays in the end of the play. So that's how the play King Lear ends. See, from the beginning to the end, we can see the dark mode and the horrible sights that is frequent there in the play. So that's why the audience and the critics demanded a revise of this play. So these are some of the major themes that we can see in this play: justice, authority versus chaos, reconciliation, nihilism, self-knowledge. So these are the major themes of this play. I hope the summary of the play, the storyline or the plot of the play was clear. So that's all about the complete and detailed summary of King Lear. And don't forget to mention your impressions, queries and suggestion about the video and its content. And if you find this content useful, don't forget to subscribe and share this to your friends. And if you would like to have a systematic and simplified study materials in the form of audio lectures, PDF files and all the previous questions and a set of practice questions, then don't forget to visit my website www.highpoint.in and join the free trial and subscribe the desirable courses, because an offer is going on for a limited time period. So check out the website, you will know more, or you can message me in the given number here. Okay, so the number is here. You can WhatsApp me or call me, and also you can message me and follow me in Instagram as well. And thank you for watching this video. Let me meet you in the next video session. Until, keep studying for NET and stay tuned to my channel. Bye bye and thank you.